Plug it in. The radio gets the sound. Yeah, I can actually show you my open. Yeah, I love throw. But like, yeah, I got one. Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah. I can also do
Like in place, like so.
But it is. You gotta. You So the Olympics like. Why do you like the fine? I got some other stuff.
That's it. Oh, my goodness. I mean, it's pretty good. I'm scared to take it. I'm like the morning.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I don't know.
Nothing.
But I very well like I'm not really worried. Oh, very. Yeah.
It's worth me off on this, so that the wall.
Oh, geez. Oh, my sister. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started. Welcome back to the University of Houston. Okay, so I'm actually your instructor for this semester, and this class is CHEM2, right? CHEM1312. Specific section number is 18785. Okay, the class will actually happen between 8:30 to 10. But I typically, or I always, end the class like 10 minutes before 10. So that you have enough time to go to your next class. Okay, so don't worry about the time. I'm actually a person who is very strict to the time. Okay, and my name is Tai-Yen Chen, as you can see here. I will be actually your instructor this semester. Okay, and you can see the email here. Okay. Office hour for this class was set every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. Okay, so feel free to drop by my office at Fleming 139E. Okay, then if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Okay, this course will actually mainly is actually in-person courses. Okay, and there are other courses. Okay, but personally, I don't really care you are here or not. So the only thing I cares for this class is help you to get the grade that you want. That's actually my only mission here. Okay, I'm a chemistry professor. I want to make it very clear that this course will be just one of the courses that you take in your journey. Okay, unless you have chemistry major, you are passionate about chemistry, then yes, you should actually learn every single thing I say in the class. Okay. Otherwise, this is just something you have to finish and move on. Okay. So let me emphasize these things again. Okay. The only thing I want to achieve in this class is to get the grades that you want so you can move on to your next stage. Is that clear? Okay, so you don't have to email me and say, okay, you're not going to the lectures. Okay, because I respect my students. I consider you are adults. No matter what you do it for yourself. Right? You go to a lecture, you learn things, you get a grade. Great, that's wonderful. Then you can move on to your next target. I think that's actually the wonderful things that you should actually do for yourself. Okay, but people have different way of learning, which I totally understand. Some people actually get more focused when you're in the in-person lecture room. Some people prefer watch a video, so you can actually learn according to your understanding. That is totally fine too. Okay, so don't email me says, Dr. Chen, I'm going to do this. so I can attend your lecture today. I mean, you are adults. Okay, you decide what to do. Okay, I know on the syllabus we say attendance is actually a must, right? That's probably the only thing. Okay. So if you feel like you need to do something at the lecture time, that's fine. Okay, but do pay attention and invest enough time so you can get the grade that you want, so that you can actually move on. Okay, and my role here is teach you how to achieve that. Okay, so that is actually the number one things I want you to understand. Second thing is that during this lecture, you'll realize that I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Okay, and the reason I do that is because I want you to actually understand the stuff in the lecture. The benefit of that is that once you understand things inside the lecture room, when you go back home, you don't need to spend that much time. You don't need to go through all these tutoring sections, okay, which is going to take you a lot of time, right? But you know your life is so busy, right? College is actually fun. You want to actually make yourself more efficient, get the things that you want. It shows a lot of time, so you can just spare some other time to do the things that you think actually move on. All right. So when I ask questions in the lecture, trying to participate. The more you participate, you'll realize this course is much easier than you thought. Okay. So that's actually the second thing. Okay. Third things is that I want you to think about what is your plan to get a good grade for this lecture. Okay, so many of you will later on see that, okay, you feel like you understand the material, and you did poorly when you do your exam, right? So in this lecture, we're going to practice a lot. Okay, how you can do well when you do your exam. Okay, so those are the things that you want to actually get when you come to this lecture room. Okay, you can come to this lecture room, okay, and learn how to actually solve the problem logically and efficiently. Those are the things that I want you to remember. Okay. Sometimes I go too fast. Sometimes I have accents that you don't understand. Okay? If that happens, feel free to raise your hand, stop me. I will stop for you. Okay? If you have any questions, raise your hand. I will stop for you. Okay, so don't be afraid. Okay, you spent a lot of money for these lectures, right? Yeah. So when your money worth its value, okay, you should do the same for all your lectures. Okay, you should actually demanding high quality of education. All right. Of course, not all the professors will actually agree with me. Okay, they'll be like, wow. So UH is actually a tier 1 university, right? Does everyone know what tier 1 means? Any idea? So in the US, we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 university. Okay. Those tier 1, 2, 3 was actually grouped based on the nature that faculty was asked to do. Okay, that's actually the definition for the faculties. For the tier 1, the things we do the most is what? Research. Okay, so why research matters for the university? Because professors can actually write the federal grant, get the money from the government. And those money will actually come to the university so they can very run. Okay, so when we say tier 1 university means majority of the faculties, they are research professors. The main thing they do is actually publish papers, writing grant. Therefore, teaching for most of the time. It's not the main focus. Okay. I'm slightly different. Okay, I'm a faculty doing research, but I enjoy teaching. So I spend a lot of time talking to students, okay, trying to coach you how to do better for every single courses that you're going to take in the future. Okay, the content for Chem 1312, of course, is about chemistry, but the things that I want you to learn is not just that. Okay, so there's actually a lot of things you're going to find out, okay, but give you a quick summary. The things that I really want to learn is that how to summarize information quickly. Okay, so every single chapters, you'll be able to download a handout, which was summarized by me. Every single chapter, you have one page handout and only one page. Okay, and one page questionnaire associated with that handout. I do that for every single chapter for you. Okay, the reason I do that is actually I want to give you an example of how to summarize information. Okay, summarizing information is going to be a very important ability that you must have in the future. Okay, because you're living in an age that you just have too much information. And not all the information is actually relevant. Right? How to actually condense the relevant information and internalize those are the things you learn. And these things is actually true for all the stuff that you're going to learn. Okay, so you will see that more clearly from actually goes on. All right. So let's actually quick run down the things that I want to know before we get started. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so if not, then let me introduce a little bit myself. Okay. Okay, first, does everybody have access to Microsoft Teams now? How many of you actually is familiar with the Microsoft Teams? Okay, so for this class, all the material, okay, were posted on Teams. Okay, if you already visit our team site, you should realize that I am a very organized professor. Right? So everything you need, every information you need for these lectures will post it over there. Okay, if you come and talk to me, make sure that you do your homework. Make sure you read through the post over there. Okay, so just give you a quick, let me go through there so you can know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is actually the Microsoft Teams site that I posted 1 week before the semester started. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can see there are actually two channels right here. Okay, 0 and 1. Where the 0 is actually the channel that I'm going to post all the relevant materials you are going to need for this lecture. Okay, the second channel is actually if you have any questions, if you encounter a question that you don't understand, go to the second channel. You can post your question over there. Okay. If I feel like it's easier for me to just address those things in the team, on the teams, I will actually just say, okay, think about this, think about that, what keywords, okay, think along that way that you will figure out the answer. Okay, but if you feel like it's too difficult, then actually pull those questions to the in-person lecture. I will explain those things right here. Okay, and I respond things very quickly. If you don't hear me back within a day, follow up. Okay, if I don't actually reply you within a day, it means probably I actually reply too many, I probably miss you already. Okay, so do follow up, don't hesitate. Okay, this is actually another time for you to be hesitate. Okay, you're trying to learn things, you want to just get through these things with the grade that you want, right? I'm your instructor. That's my responsibility to reply to you. Okay, so do ask questions either here or email me. Okay, those are the two most efficient way to connect with me. Some students, I know you like Canvas so much. You want to actually send out all the information on Canvas, but unfortunately, I don't check my Canvas every day. Okay, I barely check my Canvas. And this is the first layer, most of the time, I probably actually won't realize it. Okay, but if you actually post on the team chat, or you actually post, you just email me, then you'll hear me back within a day for sure. All right. Okay, so on the team side, okay, you can see that there's actually a lot of information that I posted. Okay, so you can actually go through the things quickly. So I guess I can jump back to my note because I have every information here too. Okay, so I joined University of Houston since 2016. So that's 9 years now. Okay, I started to teach the Gen Chem since the 3rd year. So this is actually my 8th year to teach. Okay, so this is actually me on the chemistry department website. Okay, if you want to learn about what I do, there's a QR code you can scan. Oh, by the way, I will going to ask you to use your cell phone a lot in this lecture. Okay, so you'll see why later on. Okay, but get your cell phone ready. You can just scan and to get those information yourself too. Okay. This is actually my research website. So during these lectures, I talk a lot of things that's actually outside the content of CHEM1312. For example, I typically tells you the things that you may actually feel interested in. And for example, what it is like to do research as an undergraduate, right? So if in the future I want to go to do some research for the graduate school or other things that I will need, what the application process will look like. Okay, if I want to go to medical school, what other things that you will actually pay more attention to. Okay, so all of this will be actually covered along the lecture. Okay. Next one. I don't know how many of you check out this. So this is actually the Redmine Professor website, right? So you can scan the QR code, you can see all the comments within the Redmine Professor. Okay. So I strongly encourage you to actually look at the comments over later. Something I think is actually very interesting. Okay, I don't know how many of you choose this course because of that. Okay, but if you haven't actually read it, go read it. I think it's actually interesting to see. Okay. And the very last one, which is actually the most relevant things, is that all the things we do, all the things we say in the in-person lecture, it will be posted on video, we post it on YouTube. Okay. So I want everybody to subscribe this channel first, so you got the notification. So take out your phone, subscribe. Okay. Of course, I do this. The other main reason is because I want to become a YouTuber professor, which sounds cool. Do you notice that the avatar of the channel is me? It's pretty cool. Okay. So you should actually already notice that on the team side, I asked you to watch some video before coming to this lecture, right? This lecture will be held in a so-called flipped class format, meaning that you have to watch some videos before you come to this in-person lecture. Okay, because in the in-person lecture, we're going to spend time to condense those knowledge. Okay, so you can actually see how I condense the knowledge for you. Okay, you want to actually learn that too. that's actually even more valuable than the contents of this course. Because those are the things that actually apply to all the things we learn in the future. Okay? So I guess we'll go to that later. Okay. But the other things that is very important is that I'm going to use things called the points solution. Okay, to help you to memorize some of the key concepts inside the lectures. Okay, so what's going to happen is something like this. Okay, I will actually ask you to use your phone to answer some questions. Okay, for example, this is actually the things when you actually enter, when you actually download an app, once you enter the code the app provides. Okay, then you can actually, if things will actually pop out on your phone, then you can actually do this instant response. Okay, so I will know, okay, do you really understand this concept or not? Okay, if you don't, like, I can actually elaborate on why you don't understand the things. Okay, so I think by this, like, instant correction of the incorrect concept is actually very helpful for the students. Okay, so you know you're actually doing things correctly in the in-person lecture. Then when you go back home, when you look at your questions, you know what to do further. Okay, so somebody already actually downloaded and trying to do the things, right? When you actually respond, this is actually show up in real time. Okay, then everybody will just watch a live show here. Okay, so I think it's actually a very good way for us to actually interact in a very quantitative way. Then actually to know how much that you know and what other things that I probably have to explain a little bit more. All right? Okay, we'll do this next time when everybody have the point solution. Syllabus is another thing that I want you to actually read very carefully. Okay. Here are actually, I think the things, these are the information from your syllabus. I just put it down here. I think the first thing I want to talk about is this. How the grade was calculated, which is actually the most important thing that you, for this class, right? Like I say, the goal is actually to get a grade that you want. Okay, and everybody have different goals, so that means A is actually the best. Okay, you just need to get the things that you like. Okay, but the things that matters here is that a few sentences I want to highlight here. First of all, you can see like your score was actually contributed by 4 parts. Part 1, your homework, right? That's 12 points. Part 2, quiz, 6 points. Part 3, activity. And part 4 is your exam. Okay, so majority of the points coming from where? Exams. So you actually really do well for your exam. Okay, so that is actually the part that most of students fails. Okay. So exam is actually the one contribute most to your grade. Okay. But most of the time you spend your time on what? That's 18%, right? That 18% will consume you probably actually more than 18% of your effort of the class. Okay, you have weekly homework. It means every week you actually finish those homework questions. It's going to take you quite some time. Okay. But chemistry department, not me, make it clear. Chemistry department designed in this way, right? So you really can spend your time and follow along, okay? The biggest problems that I see for students is actually you let yourself falling behind. Once you fall behind, you will never get it back, okay? And everybody will always think, okay, now let's follow someone else, I'm special, right? But the statistics tell us that once you fall behind, it's really tough to get the grade that you want. Okay. Another information I want to make it clear to you. You're going to have 3 midterms and 1 final, right? So the typical average of the midterm 1, let's say, is here. Okay. Midterm 3 probably is like here. These are the 2, and you're going to get the high score for most of the time. Okay. Final probably somewhere here. Okay. Midterm 2 here. Okay, so everybody should see that now. The things that is going to kill you is what? Midterm 2. Okay. But sometimes I realize that's actually an easy way for you to get grade for midterm 2. Okay, so in the actually early this year, I teach CHEM 1312 for the spring semester. We have 4 sections. Okay. My CHEM 2 average is slightly better than, for the midterm 2 average is slightly better than the midterm 1. Okay, how I do it? I use that point solution a lot in the class so that I can actually make sure you understand the difficult points. Okay, once you remove those points, suddenly the grade just bump up so much. Okay, the average hours of our sessions is 10 points higher than other sections for midterm 2. Okay, so I want to do that again for you this semester. Okay, so do download the point solution. Okay, do try to answer the question I asked in the lecture. Okay, that will help you so much when preparing all the homework and midterms. All right. So the things I haven't talked about is this. What are these 2 points? Okay, so every professor is going to have slightly way to give out those 2 points. Mine is very easy. Okay, you're going to do 2 surveys. Okay, so we're going to do a midterm survey. Okay, if you do the midterm surveys, you got 1 bonus point. Okay, if you do the final course evaluation, you got another 1. Easy enough? Fair enough? Okay, so why do I want to do the midterm survey? The reason is actually very simple, because in the beginning of the semester, I don't know you, right? I don't know the big group of our class. I just pick the way that I think that makes most sense to me. Okay, but you know, every time I teach these things, I feel like it's all different. Okay, so you guys have different requirements. Okay, so you can actually reflect the things that you feel like I'm doing good or I'm doing bad. Okay, then I'm going to pull out the statistics telling you, okay, people complaining about this, we're going to address this in the second half of the semester. Okay, so I will do the change for you, but you guys will let me know what changes that you want me to make. All right. So once you know the scoring system, you also need to know there's actually no curving for these lectures. Okay, whatever you got on your homework, whatever you got on your midterm, that's all you get. Okay, so you don't need to actually come to me and say you want to do A, B, C, and D, because I give you 1 point or 2 more points. I cannot do that. Okay, the only thing I can do is to teach you how to get good scores for this test. Okay, if you have problems, reaching out to me as early as possible. Okay. If you're reaching out to me in the beginning of the semester, I consider you as a person who really want to help yourself. which I am going to be very happy to help you. You come to me at the very end of the semester, and I feel like we never talk, and you start to actually ask for my favor. I will shut my door. So don't even try. Okay? So if you want to get the help early. It's very important. All right, the other things which I got asked a lot, but it is actually clear written on the syllabus. Okay. If you are going to miss some of your exams, okay, which is going to be detrimental. Okay, these are the reasons and only reasons that you can use. So you can have a different consideration of your situation. Okay, so all this information was on the team side. And in the syllabus sections, you can see all these things too. Okay, so make sure that you read through those things and understand how to play this game. All right. Okay, and since I've been teaching for many years now, I actually collecting the opinion from students. Okay, so students actually share how they get good grades, from this course. Okay, so I summarize those things and post it here. You can actually watch through their suggestions, how they actually do it. Okay, all these students who actually share their opinion, they are the students who actually got A for these courses. Okay, but I actually sharing some of the things that I do that I think is going to be helpful for you. Okay, and this one is actually very interesting. It actually lists out the agenda, how she walk along the way, how she actually allocate her time, so that she feel like she can get an easy A for this courses. Okay, so all this information is there. Okay, it's your choice whether you want to actually take the same route or not. All right, so finally we come to this. This is actually the post that's really relevant to get the grade that you want. Okay, so you can see here we have the YouTube Hangout, chapter 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so these are the 3 hangouts that you will need for the YouTube videos. Okay, so those are happening. You just click it, then you will be able to download it. Okay, and then when you come to these in-person lectures, you will need this in-person lecture hangout, chapter 10, 11, and 12. Okay, for the midterm 1, those are the 3 chapters that you will need. Okay, the very last one is that the things I do differently, slightly differently than other professors, like we have a review hangout for your midterm 1. Okay, then review hangout will be actually a combination of all the contents inside chapter 10 to 12. Okay, we're going to go through those questions together and teach you how to read the questions, understand the question, find the keywords, connect to a concept, find the equation, and solve the problem. Okay, so those are the things we will do a lot in these lectures. Okay, so this is actually on you. So those are the YouTube videos you need to watch every week. Those are the things that you need to watch. Okay, it's actually organized in a way, you know. For week 1, these are the videos you need to watch. Week 2, week 3, and week 4, so on and so forth. Okay. So before we hit the first midterm after 5 weeks, and you'll realize that I asked you to finish all the video within 4 weeks. Okay, something is totally doable. Okay, because I've been testing this for 4 years. It's totally fine. Okay. And what are we going to do in week 5? What's the plan for week 5? Got 5 weeks, right? So we are going to finish chapter 10 to 12 on week 1 to week 4, right? What are we going to do on week 5? Reviews. For me, reviews. We're going to go through so many questions. So if you're so prepared before you take the exam, right? So all these things require you to really participate. Okay, because if you actually learn how I actually solve the problems, you walk into the room if you're so confident. Okay, so that's the things that I want you to have. Okay, but do work with me. Okay, so like I say, I could emphasize these things over and over again. It's your life, it's your choice. Okay, but it's also the results that you could take, regardless if it's good or bad, right? You make your decision, you determine what you're going to live in the future. All right? So, with that, I think it's actually a lot of introduction information that's very essential for these courses. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Yes?
You were to compare the difficulty of CHEM1 and CHEM2.
CHEM1, so what's the major difference between CHEM1 and CHEM2? CHEM1 is more about basic knowledge, conceptual knowledge, right? So in CHEM1, you learn about bonds, you learn about atoms, right? Orbitals, right? What's the difference between CHEM1 and CHEM2 is that CHEM2 now become calculation heavy. Okay, and that is actually the part that makes students suffers, that makes students fail. Okay, so how do you actually read the questions? Then you can immediately associate into a specific equation to use. That part is largely missing, and no one teaches you how to actually do that. I do. I teach you how to do that. So you have to practice that a lot. Okay, so that's actually main differences. Is that clear? Okay, cool. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then yes. About your grades? I don't know. We'll see, right? So I'm a professor, but remember I'm a human too. Who I would like to help? And remember this, it's always true. I only like to help people who help themselves. Okay? If I cannot see anything you do, trying to help yourself in a meaningful way, I may look very cruel to you. But I think that's actually fair. Okay, so does that answer your question? Cool. Okay, any other questions? So my eye is actually not very well. So if you're sitting in the back, if you raise your hand, you can actually raise really high. So we good? Oh yeah, good. Go ahead. Depends on what you like. Depending on what you want to have in the future. You should have heard me say so many times about future is towards now, right? It's really up to you. What do you want to actually have? Are you a chemistry major? Yeah. So unless the things you do is related to chemistry, for example, you are doing some biochemistry research, okay, or you want to actually do some biochemistry major in the future, then yeah. But if it's not, then this just kind of like us. You can actually consider these things. Okay, this class that I set up, you can consider we're using CHEM1312 as a material to prepare ourselves to learn all other subjects efficiently. Okay, does that sound reasonable to you? Yeah, so let's actually go the error pressure achieved here. All right, any other questions? Okay, now then, we're going to start the first topic of chapter 10. All right, in chapter 10, we talk about solution. Okay. So, what is solution? What is the solution? What is solution made of? Solute and very good. Solute and solvent forming a homogeneous mixture. Then we call it as a solution. Okay. One of the very important property of solution is concentration, right? So I guess everybody understand what concentration is, right? Okay. For example, you know, spotlight versus liquor. Okay. Spotlight and liquor, are they very different, right? Yeah, they are all alcoholic drink. Okay. But the concentration is actually very different, right? So when we talk about concentration, right, the solute matters, right? So in these two different solutions, the liquors, you have a lot more ethanol, ETOH. That is actually the species that when you feel drunk, right? So that is actually the solute. Okay. In CHEM 1312, we only talk about aqueous solution. Okay, what does that mean? Yes, it's water-based. And meaning what? Your solvent is water. Okay, so the solvent is always water in terms of control. But we only talk about very, very focused type of solution. Okay. Unless the question specify, okay, your solvent is actually non-water. But that's actually only very few examples. Okay. Majority of the cases you are going to encounter for this class is aqueous solution. Okay. So now we need to define the terms the scientists developed and used, okay, to define the concentration. Okay, so you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, but this 3 is actually one group. That 3 is another group. Okay. So the first one, which has the symbol of capital M, right? Anybody know what that means? Molarity. Okay, so let me write down. Okay, so how do you define the molarity of a solution? Here says the equations, right? You need to actually divide the mole of your solute. Okay, so whenever I mention the solute, I use this subscript U to indicate its solute. Okay. Divided by the volume of your solution, where I use the subscript S to indicate it's a solution. Okay. And the solution must have a unit of liters. Okay, so basically says how many solute that you have within a given volume of a solution. That's how we define the concentration. The larger the mole of solute that you have, the higher the concentration, especially the higher molarity. Okay. And this is just the things that I think everybody should know by now, because those are the things that from your Chem 1. How do you calculate the mole of your solute? It will be the mass of your solute divided by the formula weight of your solute. Okay. So, just a side note. Remember I say you only have one hangout per chapter, meaning that every single thing I put on the handout are the things that you need to memorize. Okay, everything I put on the handout are the things that you need to memorize. These tables, you have all these equations. You need to memorize those equations. Okay, it's very important you memorize the definition of different concentration terms. Okay, but that is actually the things. We talk about the molarity. That's all you need to remember, right? How to calculate mole of your solution. How to calculate your molarity of your solution. Basically, the mole of your solution divided by the volume of your solution in liters. That's the molarity. The second term is called the normality. Okay, so the only difference between the molarity and normality is that molarity is calculated from your molarity multiply the number of equivalent. So how do you know what's the definition of number of equivalent? Okay, so this is actually a new term that you will need to learn from this chapter. Okay, so how to actually comprehend this idea? I will give you an example and you will see. So HCl, everybody know what HCl is? It's a strong acid that you encounter commonly actually in your life. Okay, so once you throw the HCl into the water solution, it dissociates. It produces one equivalent of proton, H plus, and one equivalent of chloride minus, right? So in the CHEM1312, one thing that we emphasize a lot is that we want to know the pH of a solution. Okay, so pH, that's another way to talk about the proton concentration of your solution. Okay, so in this case, you know, if you have one N HCl, you're going to produce one NH plus. Okay, so that's like a 1-to-1 conversion. However, sometimes you have H2SO4. You will produce two equivalent of H plus and SO4 2 minus. Okay, so in this case, even though you know you have one N H2SO4, okay, but the concentration of your proton will be doubled because your H2SO4 will release two equivalent of H plus once it dissociates. Okay, so in this case, we say that HCl have number of equivalent of H plus equals to 1. And in this case, for the H2SO4, your number equivalent will equals to 2. Okay, so with that being said, you will say that if you have 1M HCl, then its normality will be 1M HCl. But if you have a 1N H2SO4, then the normality will be 2N H2SO4 for the proton concentration. Okay, does that make sense to you? You know how to actually calculate the number of equivalent. Okay, it's very important that you can see, look at the formula and predict if you want to actually calculate the normality of your proton concentration. Can you identify the correct number of equivalent numbers? Then you can compute the normality properly. Okay, so it's nothing fancy. It is just some simple concept that you need to actually get used to. Okay. So far, we should see that I'll talk about the molarity and normality. Okay, so these are only two terms where your denominator has the variable of volume in liter. Okay, all the others will not involve volume. All the others, it should be. So this is one group. There's another one. Okay, so the remaining three, they don't use volume anymore. Okay. The first one we're going to talk about is called the mole fraction. Okay, so when you talk about the mole fraction, you can say it's the mole fraction of your solute or mole fraction of your solvent. The only difference is that when you compute the mole fraction of your solute, you need to put the mole of your solute on the top. You are going to put the total mole of your solution at the bottom. Okay, what's the total mole of your solution, which is the sum of the mole of your solute plus the mole of your solvent. All right? Any questions? Good. Yeah. Similarly, if you want to compute the mole fraction of your solvent, then the only thing change is actually your denominator, right? You only put the mole of your solvent on the top. At the bottom is actually the mole sum of your solvent and solute. So that's actually how you define the mole fraction. The next one is so-called the mass percent. Okay, so definition is actually very simple too. Okay, when we talk about mass percent, the numerator is always the mass of your solute. Part is actually the mass sum of your solute and solvent. Okay. The very last one is the molality. Typically, we label it with a lowercase m. Okay. Definition of this is also very simple. On the top is actually mole of your solute. At the bottom is the mass of your solvent only in kilogram. Okay. Solvent only in kilogram. Okay, make sure it's solvent. All right. So a few things I think is actually worth pointing out that may help you to memorize all these things. If you look at all these different concentration terms, all the terms except molarity, which you only talk about the mass of your solvent, right? All the other is actually the property of your solution. For example, the volume of your solution, the total mole of your solution, the mass of your solution, right? Only the molality, the lowercase m, using the mass of your solvent in kilogram. Okay, only this guy is actually the outliers who only use the solvent properties of the denominator. All others will be the property of your solution. Okay. I also want to point out the molarity the capital M, is the only one that involve volume. Okay, only the molarity involve volume. So why do you think this is important? It's because one of the very important things in this chapter is going to ask you to do the concentration conversion between different terms. Okay, and then in many questions, you're going to see it provide information of density. But the information, you may or may not use it. Okay, so where would you use it? When will you use the density information in the question? Is when you are actually converting the concentration terms from these three to molarity. That's the only time you will need to use the density information. All other times you don't need it. Okay? And then in all these concentration conversion problems, you will always need to make some assumptions. Okay, so here I list out all the assumptions that you should make. It looks quite complicated. Okay, for example, for your molarity, if you start from your molarity, then you assume you have 1 liter of solution. If you start from the molality, you assume you have 1 kilogram of solvent. If you start from the mole fraction, you assume you have total 1 mole of solvent in solute. If you start from mass percent, you assume you have 100 grams of solvent in solute. Looks very complicated, right? But all of the things I wrote here is actually very simple. Make your denominator either 1 or 100. Okay, so all the things I wrote here, the main purpose is actually make denominator equals to 1 or 100. Okay, so that is actually the main idea. All right. So this is actually the biggest part, one of the biggest part, okay, of this chapter. Okay. So you see, there's actually all the information that you want to know for the first part of chapter 10. Okay. Any questions so far? So if it is actually involved a percent, make it 100, because you want to actually make it 100% and so on. All right. Any other questions? Very good question. So if not, let's practice a few. Yes. Get your. When do we know to use the molarity and the normality? So you will select the question. It will tell you which one to start with. We'll go through the questions now, then you will see that. Yeah. Yes, all the things you see, all the things you learn today will be on my YouTube. Subscribe, like, that's the other thing. Oh, comment, yeah, comment. Give me a smiling face over there. Yeah, I'm learning how to become a YouTuber. Okay, so those are the things that we want to understand so far. Okay, and you will see quickly how important this thing is. Okay, so with that 20 minutes, I want to actually do as many examples for you, so that you know how to do the same thing when you go back home. Okay, so the others, The other document is actually a questionnaire document. Okay, so you have all these on things too. Okay, so let's just go through the questions one by one. Question number 1. Calculate the molality of an aqueous solution that is 8.1% by mass, calcium chloride. You may need to know the density of 1.2 gram per mole. Okay, so what are the keywords here? Good. What's the other keyword? So you see 7% by mass, right? That's the concentration 10, concentration term mass percent. Okay, so you see two concentration inside of questions, right? It tells you this is a concentration conversion problem. Make sense? Okay, so what are the things you are looking for? You want to know the molality, right? So every time you write out these things, write out is the definition too. Okay, so you need to know what the molarity means. You need to know that it is actually the mole of your solute divided by the mass of your solvent in kilogram, right? So you know the question you actually going after the things you want to solve is the molarity. And you should know that the definition of molarity, in order to calculate that, you should know the mole of your solute divided by the mass of the solvent in kilogram. Okay? What kind of data do you have then? What's the known? You know you have another concentration term, right? The percent, the mass percent, which you know is calculated by the mass of your solute divided by the mass of your solution times 100%, right? And then you know this is actually 8.1%. All right. So remember I said when you're actually trying to do this concentration conversion, you always need to make some assumption to start with, right? So you make assumption based on the things that you know. The things that you know is what? Percent, right? It's percent, therefore you assume the denominator, which is mass of your solute plus your mass of your solvent is going to equals to 100. Okay, so the student who asked this question is actually how I know I'm going to make 100. All right. So if I know this, then I can rewrite this, right? Mass of my solute divided by this term, which is 100, is going to equals to multiply 100 is going to equal to 8.1. Therefore, we know the mass of my solute is going to equal to 8.1 gram. Therefore, I know the mass of my solvent is going to equal to 100 minus 8.1, which is 91.9 gram. All right. So once I know this, okay, then you go back and check out the things you need, right? Do you have this now? So, right, you have in gram, right? But you can divide 1,000 to make it kilogram. Okay. But do I have this? Do I have the mole of my solute? I don't. The only thing that I have is the mass of my solute. right? But I do know how to calculate the mole of my solute, which is the mass of my solute divided by the formula weight. Okay, so you want to actually calculate the formula weight. Okay, so the things that you have is what? Calcium chloride, which in terms of chemical equations is CaCl2, right? So once you know the formula, then you go to check out your periodic table to calculate the formula weight. Then you realize the formula weight is going to equal to 110.9 gram per mole. Okay, so once you know that, what you do is actually you can do this calculation, right? You have 8.1 gram of your solute divided by its formula weight, 110.9. So 110.9, okay, gram per mole. So when you do this calculation, then you will be able to get the number of 0.0279 mole. So that's actually the mole of your solute. Okay, so once you get this, then you can calculate your molarity is simply equals to the mole of your solute, 0.0729, divided by the mass of your solvent in kilogram, therefore 91.9 divided by 1,000. That's your denominator. And then once you calculate that, you're going to get a value of 0.794 molarity. And that's how you do that. Okay, question so far? So do you know how to calculate? Does everybody familiar with how to calculate the formula weight? So do I have a periodic? Okay, so cool, I have this. So this is actually a periodic table you're going to have for your homework midterms. You're going to always have this. Okay. So how do you calculate the formula weight of CaCl2? CaCl2 is composed of 1 calcium and 2 chloride, right? So what you do is actually go to the periodic table, find out the calcium, and then find out the Cl. Okay, so 1 calcium has the atomic weight of 40.078. So 1 of length. You have 2 chloride, so 2 times 35.453. Once you do that calculation, you got this 110.9 gram per mole. Okay. So this, I guess this is actually from CHEM1 then, right? How to calculate the formula weight of the compound. All right, but I hope this actually clarifying like questions. Okay, any other questions? Okay. What? Okay, so what's the solvent? What's the solute? Solvent is the things that dissolve the solute. Okay, give you a quick example, salt water. Okay, you throw salt into water, right? Salt will be your solute. Okay, water will be the solvent. Typically, solvent is actually the D is composition of your solution. Okay, so we also have a more scientific description about solutions in the YouTube video. Okay, so if you are not familiar with this concept, go back and watch it. Okay, and then you'll feel like it's a lot easier to understand what I'm actually talking about in the lecture. Calcium. So the molarity, why do I divide it by 1,000 is because when I do all this calculation to find out the mass of my solute, right, it has a unit of grain. But when you calculate the molarity, it has a unit of kilogram. To convert a gram to kilogram, you divide it by 1,000. Okay, so these are all good questions because you need to know that all these little details will influence the number of input when you do your exam. You want to make sure all these things are done properly. Okay, any other questions? If not, I want to go to another example to create the same idea. If I don't see you, just yell, then I will stop. Okay. Let's look at the question number 2. Okay, I don't know why that shows errors for my number 2. That's fine. Let's do number 3 then. I will go back to number 2 next time. Okay. Question number 3, determine the mass in grain of pentane that must be added into 10 grams of benzene to make a 20 m solution. Okay. What are the keywords here? What are the keywords here? Mass, okay. What else? Good. Okay, so first thing first, right? What do you want to determine? The mass of what? Pentane. Okay, so pentane is something. Okay, you don't have to change the background. There's like some species. You want to know the mass. Okay. But you say these things must be added into a certain thing to form a solution. Right? So look at this wording. These things must be added to something to give you a solution. Okay? This tells you what? The things we are looking at it is a solute. Very important concept. Okay, so you don't really care about what it is. Okay, yeah, of course you will need to use the pentane, right? But this is equivalent to the mass of your solute. Okay, that's how I'm going to interpret it. Okay. So if you know the pentane is your solute, then you add into the other thing. That means actually this guy will be what? Good. It is your solvent. Okay, so you have 10 grain. So let's say data. Okay, you know you have 10 grain solvent. Okay, or I should probably write this. Mass of your solvent equals to 10 grain. Okay. What other things that we know? 20 m solution, right? You see that lowercase m. What is less concentration term? Molality, right? So you know the molality, which was defined as the mole of your solute divided by the mass of the solvent in kilogram, which is going to equals to 20. So what we need to do is actually you're going to go from your data to figure out the mass of your solute. Okay. So from your data, do you actually have any relationship to the mass of your solute? Right. From this, you don't see the mass of your solute inside the equation, right? This lowercase m is actually the molarity of your solution, right? On the top is actually the mole of your solute. At the bottom is actually mass of your solvent, right? None of this term showing the mass of your solute yet, right? But we know the mole of your solute was computed by the mass of your solute divided by the formula weight, right? This means I can actually figure out the mass of my solute by doing this, right? The mole of my solute times its formula weight. So if I can actually do that, then I can know the mass of my solute. Okay? So that will be the plan, right? So this is actually how you get the answer, right? Now the question is actually, do you know the mole of your solute? Okay. So now the target becomes this guy, right? Can you actually write the things? Okay. In order to calculate that, you can compute the mole of your solute by the concentration of your solution times the mass of your solvent in kilogram, right? So what I do is just I rearrange this equation to create this, right? And I know concentration of my solution is 20. The mass of my solvent is 10 gram, but I need to convert it to kilogram, right? So by doing that, then I know the mole of my solute will simply equal to 0.2 mole. Okay. So once I know I have 0.2 mole, so this guy will be 0.2. The next thing I need to know will be what's the formula weight of my solute, right? In this case, our solute is something called pentane, right? So again, this actually goes back to your CHEM1312. Okay, what is pentane? Which you know like is CH3, CH2, 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 CH3, right? Penta means five carbon. Okay, so this is kind of like relying your CHEM1312 knowledge. Okay, so that is actually a formula you're going to use, right? And then in combination use with your periodic table, you figure out how many carbon that you have, how many hydrogen that you have. Then you should be able to calculate the formula weight of pentane is 72.15 gram per mole. Okay, so once you figure it out, then you can compute the mass of your solute. It's going to equals to 14.43 gram. All right. So this is actually how you solve this question. Okay. Any questions? So the one you're actually looking at the mass of your solute, right? Yeah. So it will be just the formula weight. I guess people also point molecular weight, they're actually equivalent thing. Yeah. So they are the same thing. Okay. Before we dismiss, okay, let me quickly actually run down the things we went through. I will answer your question later. Okay. So what do you learn? What should you learn? We give you two examples, right? I want you to see that how I actually handle the question, because this is critical. When you do this yourself, you need to do the same. First, identify keywords. Second, write out the Q. Q is what? Questions, right? What is actually specific thing that you are looking for? Then you write out your D, data. What is the things that's known? Okay, and trying to figure out how you can go from your known to your unknown. Okay, it is always a step-by-step connections. If you follow these patterns, it's a lot easier for you to figure out how to solve the problem. Okay, rather than sitting there, you don't know what to do. Okay, these is the critical things you're going to learn for this lecture. So get used to it. All right. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you.
Okay, people are coming in real quick. Well, first thing.
Yeah. So with that. The only purpose of 3 days. You can find a seat nearby. So I know. Sorry. No, don't worry about it.
Yes, I will meet you guys outside until I check the room.
So far back.
One more question, just one more question. With the attendance, like, how do you like get the attendance? I do not. Okay.